Hello everybody, welcome back and welcome to another top 10 list. Today I am finally doing my top 10 Chuck Norris films. Chuck Norris is a legendary action star, mainly from the 70s and 80s. He's done some incredible action films over the years. He's one of the top genuine martial artists that have made action movies, and thanks to the invention of the internet, he's also become something of a legend online in regards to the online jokes. And if you don't know what I mean by that, just have a look online in regards to the legendary online Chuck Norris jokes. What else is there to say about Chuck Norris, really? He is one of those actors that I grew up on. He's done some really fun movies over the years. No one's ever going to give Chuck Norris awards for acting, but in regards to really testosterone high action movies and some really, really fun 80s action movies, he is really one of the greatest of all times. A true legend, very, very entertaining to watch, and I hope you enjoy watching this top 10 list.
You're the one people call the Lone Wolf? I've been called that, but I have no.
Not that much. I heard another rumor that you were bitten by a king cobra.
Yeah, I was. But after 5 days of agonizing pain, the cobra died.
Now, at number 10 on the list, I'm putting Expendables 2. I know he's not in it a great deal, but in my opinion, The Expendables 2 is the best Expendables film. And that's because of the array of stars that they got in it, and one of them being Chuck Norris. I thought they bigged him up massively in this film. They made him out to be this real badass. He got a really memorable scene, and he turned up at the end of the film as well, kicking ass. So, yeah, he's not in it a great deal, but it's a tip of the hat by Sylvester Stallone, I think, to Chuck Norris and his contribution to action movies over the years. So that's why I've put it on the list.
All right, come on, Norris. Come on. You didn't say go, man. You didn't say go, all right?
Now, at number 9 on the list is what was for quite a while, certainly in the 90s, arguably my favourite Chuck Norris film, and it is called Sidekicks. And it is his attempt, if you like, at doing like a Karate Kid film. And it follows a young teenager who fantasizes about being Chuck Norris's friend and doing movies alongside Chuck Norris. And he eventually ends up teaming up with him at a martial arts tournament. It's a really fun film. It's quite amusing. There's some nice comedic moments in it. And it's just kind of a nice change of pace from the usual type of Chuck Norris film. It's family friendly, and if you like the format of the Karate Kid movies, you're going to like the format of Sidekicks. Coming up at number 8 on the list is The Delta Force, a film where he teamed up with Lee Marvin to essentially take down the world's top terrorists. There's like a plane hijack that goes on. Chuck Norris and Lee Marvin basically go about kicking lots of ass. This is actually... it had a long time since I'd seen this one when I reviewed it for the channel, and it surprised me in regards to the level of budget that it had. I mean, it looked pretty spectacular, explosions all over the place, and it's a really nicely put together 80s action film. He did go on and do other Delta Force films. Delta Force 2 I do have a lot of affection for as well, but I'd had to put the Delta Force on this list because I was really super entertained by it when I rewatched it. Now, coming in at number 7 is Missing in Action 2: The Beginning. When I started reviewing Chuck Norris films for this channel, a lot of them I had seen growing up and stuff like that I hadn't seen for a long time. But I had never seen Missing in Action 2 or 3. And so I watched the first one, reviewed it on the channel, really enjoyed it, and then I watched the second one. And it really surprised me how good the second one was. The first one focuses on him going back and rescuing Vietnam vets. This one focuses on him being a prisoner of war himself. And it's actually quite brutal in parts in regards to some of the torture that him and his fellow soldiers go through and the sweet revenge that he gets at the end of the film. So it did surprise me how much I enjoyed the second one. I thought it was very, very good indeed.
Going home, missing in action.
Damn right.
James Rabbit declares war. The war isn't over until the last man comes home.
And following straight on from Missing in Action 2, we have Missing in Action. Many regard this as an all-time classic of Chuck Norris, and I have to agree, it is very, very good indeed. As I've said, this film focuses on him returning and rescuing the Vietnam vets that are prisoners of war. Takes a little bit to get going, this one, I'm not going to lie. It kind of surprised me. But once it does get going, it's full-on Chuck Norris Vietnam action. Very, very entertaining stuff with some very memorable action scenes throughout. Now at 5 on the list is Code of Silence. The film, essentially, this film is Nico, or Above the Law, before that was actually made. It's the same director, it's got many of the same actors in it, and it's got a very, very similar storyline. It's quite surprising or shocking when you watch the film how similar they both are. However, we have Chuck Norris at the helm here, not Steven Seagal, and it is a very, very good film. I thought the fight scenes were absolutely excellent here. Chuck Norris plays like a cop, and it's just a really, really good cop film first, but a really good action film as well. A lot of talent on board here that makes it a very, very entertaining watch indeed. Now coming up at number 4 on the list is Silent Rage, or as many people like to say, Chuck Norris versus Michael Myers, because this really is his first foray into horror, a genre that he doesn't really mess about with a great deal. And he plays like a police officer that essentially is trying to track down a guy that has been enhanced by science. He's like a serial killer, he's a little bit unhinged, and he's pretty unstoppable. But he doesn't bet on coming up against Chuck Norris. It's a really fun film. There's some quirky moments in it. There's some moments of humour that don't exactly fit the film. But the whole concept of Chuck Norris against like this unstoppable force is very, very entertaining to watch. And it's a very, very entertaining film.
He thought the terror was dead.
Something's wrong. What is it?
The nightmare's back. There's nothing wrong with being afraid, O'Brien. You came up against a monster.
3 years ago, Simon Moon slaughtered 22 women, but 12 more were killed by copycats.
The MO on this girl is exactly the same as Simon Moon's.
Now, coming up at number 3 on the list is a real personal favourite of mine. For a long time, I would argue that this was my favourite Chuck Norris film, and indeed, when I started re-looking and revisiting his films to review for this channel, I would have said that this was my favourite film of Chuck Norris's. Essentially, it's like a thriller with some horror elements thrown into it, and Chuck Norris plays a police officer who, years previously, managed to stop a serial killer called Simon Moon, this giant of a man who easily overpowers Chuck Norris and absolutely scars him, if you like, and He ends up escaping from prison, and Chuck Norris is convinced that he has returned. Probably you would argue that this film is quite low on action for a Chuck Norris film, and there are specific scenes added to this film where you know they've put it in just to put a little bit more action in it for the Chuck Norris fans. But the film actually doesn't need it, in my opinion. I think if they'd have focused a little bit more on the thriller aspect of this film and the characters, I think this would have been probably an all-time classic of Chuck Norris's. As it is, it's a nice addition to his filmography. It's a nice change of pace, and it's a film that I've always enjoyed. Now, coming in at number 2 on the list is Lwn Wolf McQuade, arguably his most iconic character. It's the character he's kind of referred to in Expendables 2 when Dolph Lundgren says, "I hear you go by the name of Lwn Wolf." It's Chuck Norris versus David Carradine, where he plays a U.S. Marshal. It doesn't mess about. It's essentially a Western, this, with arguably one of the most macho characters ever put to screen. Chuck Norris is badass in this, kicks ass, doesn't mess about, and it is just full-on entertainment. A crazy fun. I had a huge amount of fun rewatching this one, and I thought it was really excellent. Easily one of his best of all time.
It's time.
But for number 1, I had to go with Invasion USA. This is probably, for me, my most nostalgic Chuck Norris film. I can't get away from this one. If someone says to me, "What's your favourite Chuck Norris film?" my gut reaction is always Invasion USA. This, I think, was my first introduction to Chuck Norris. This is a film that we used to rent on VHS from the local video store, and it was like super entertaining. I mean, it makes absolutely no sense, but it's just badass. You know, the whole concept of this foreign force invading USA and Chuck Norris driving around in his pickup truck, taking them out. It's just so much fun. It really is. It's got a brilliant villain in it too, and it's just, for me, I think you could argue it's his most pure action film. Over the top silliness, but undeniably massively entertaining. So there you go, guys. That is finally my top 10 Chuck Norris films. I've been working on doing this top 10 list for probably too long, you could certainly argue. I'm really delighted to get it out there. Let me know in the comments, guys, what your thoughts are, what your favourite Chuck Norris films are. Are there any that I have missed? I would probably have liked to have watched maybe another 4 or 5 just to remind myself of them. But I really wanted to get this list out for you guys. So let me know if there's any that I have missed from this list, and I will certainly get around to watching and reviewing them on the channel. So take care, and thanks for watching.